right. Perfect. Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Nick. And we are moving along with episodes. I feel like our last recordings, like we're like getting into the groove of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I've been like at least telling people. So
just wait till episode 6.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. It's like when you watch Parks and Rec, everyone's like, wait for the first like season and a half, and then it's like perfect.
I was about to bring
yeah.
up The Office, so like same story.
Thing. Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, we're chugging along, we're getting things.
Yeah. Just like skip the first few episodes.
Right, you'll be fine.
It gets good. It's good. I promise.
How are you, Dev?
I'm good.
Yeah.
It's currently summer.
Yes.
So I'm getting nice and roasty toasty.
Roasty toast.
I've been trying to wake up in the morning. I mean, I wake up in the morning very easily.
Thank you for telling.
Yeah.
We were all worried.
No, but I go out in the morning in the back and read my book. In the morning sun while the dogs are running around. And it's a nice, like, quiet, like, slow start to the morning.
Sounds great.
It's beautiful.
What time do you wake up?
God. So like during
You're like
the
an
week.
old man.
Yeah. Well, during the week, like the alarm goes off at 6:30. So on the weekend, 7. I only get an extra half hour.
I was gonna say,
sleep.
wow, look at you go.
It sucks.
What are you currently reading? What do the fans want to know? You know what I mean?
Well, I recently just got back into reading over the past couple years. I'd say like since 2020.
Yeah.
I took a long hiatus from reading because of schools.
Yes.
Because I hated reading for school, but now I'm finding much more enjoyment reading for myself.
Yes.
The content that I want to read. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, I'm currently reading Caliban's War. Which is the second book in the Expanse series.
Okay.
And it's by James.
Yes, it is. That's his first name.
Shut up. So it's Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. Okay. And the irony in for me forgetting his name right off the top of my head is that I have recently declared him to be one of my favorite authors now.
Surprise!
Yeah, well,
Way to go, James.
This is the only second book I've read by him. There are like 8 in the series that I have to catch up to. I only watched like the first few episodes because it's a TV show as well on Amazon.
Oh,
they adapted it.
Okay. What's it called on Amazon?
The Expanse.
Oh. That makes sense.
That checks out. And it's just it's a book that takes place. It's a science fiction book that takes place in our solar system. Like Earth is thriving. They've colonized Mars, and they're working on. And they've also technically colonized the belt, the asteroid belt. And like there's just a vast culture difference between those 3 spaces, and like. There's mysterious things happening that are causing conflict between those 3 factions, but no one at the moment, as far as we know in the story, no spoilers for me, anybody, don't tell me. No one can claim ownership of these mysterious things happening. It's like,
got it.
We don't know who's like behind all this crazy shit happening.
All right. Have you watched the show yet?
I've only watched like the first few episodes of it.
Okay.
The first season, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know how many seasons there are now because I'm like, I don't want to watch it because I want to read the book.
Sure.
No, it's done really well. And like it's kind of hard science fiction where it's like they use physics controls how much gravity is on a spacecraft going through traveling and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like they did a really good job of like portraying that on the show. Yeah. But the book is really well written and I highly recommend it.
Okay, fair enough. I feel like when you talk about like reading for pleasure again, I feel like a lot of us just like hated it so much of being told of what to read in school. Because a lot of times it's like you're reading like Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf or like Chopin. You know what I mean? You're just like, I have no interest in reading this. And now on top of that, you're going to make me like critically think and take a test on something that I already hate.
And write notes. And like my big thing too is between like everything that's going on in my brain, like it takes my reading pace is a lot different than
Sure.
other people's. So I have to like reread a whole page sometimes, or like I'll just lose focus. And so like having those deadlines of being like, you have to read 10 chapters in 2 nights. Yeah. Really, I would just like skim it in 30 minutes before class.
Casually.
But like that always like messed me up. I was like, sure. I hate reading on a deadline.
Yeah, 100%. Well, also like there are times where I'm reading and I completely like my eyes are still like my brain in some capacity is still reading the words on the page, but I'm thinking about something completely different. So then I have to go back and be like,
reread the whole page.
I literally like got to the bottom and I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Yeah. But I think it was Phoebe Waller-Bridges, who new Indiana Jones movie. That'll be interesting. But she talked about there was a quote where she talked about how like she really fell out of reading, and then she like slowly had to regain this passion for it once again by like dipping her toe into like reading for pleasure and relearning that she did actually like reading, and now we know her as this beautiful great writer. Which is insane, but
right.
But I feel that like I just finished like this 800-page book, A Little Life. It's very intense, very well written, and then went from that to like this book called Tomorrow. Also very good, but just drastically different in like tone and syntax and like even just like vocabulary. And now I'm just drifting into the wild of what's next. So we'll see. But yeah, reading. You know what, everyone? Pick up a book. All right.
Well, like I jump between. I really only read 2 genres. I've dipped my toe in some other genres, but it's really only science fiction and fantasy. Okay. So like I'll read like a science fiction book and then a fantasy book, then go back to science fiction. So I just jump between those 2 spaces for each book. And it kind of like takes me a moment to be like, all right, we're talking about space. Like, all right, like this isn't magic, it's science.
Which, kind of magic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chemistry, totally potions. Magic. It's just potions. What do you call it? I am kind of a nerd though, so like we went to the beach the other week and I brought along like the Great Political Philosophies, like Volume 1, boo. And I'm just like, boo. But then like it's like going from this like really intense Little Life book that's very well written to Tomorrow, which is a little more laid back, to like this very like academic philosophy book. I kind of liked, the edges. Like it's fine to read like a quick read and like a fun read. That's fine, but it doesn't get me going like the others because I'm kind of, an asshole like that, and that's fine. I'm just like learning to accept that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Whoops. Well, like I read a Tom Clancy book recently. It was the one and only Tom Clancy book I will ever read. I get it, just not for me, and I don't think for our generation.
Did you play the game?
I have played a few of the Tom Clancy games. There's like a whole library of them. But it was just like, that's for my dad and his dad, not for me.
Right. Anyway, let's get into the topic.
Yeah. What are you going to teach me today?
Okay, cool. So I feel like the last few, our last one, not so much, but we've been going like all the way back in time. This time I'm going to take you back to the 80s.
Ooh.
Kind of the late 70s, early. Perfect. I want you to say that from now and forever.
Great.
So we're going to go back to late 70s, like 1979.
Okay.
Into the 80s.
Okay.
This is more of like another like fun like story, more so than like let me tell you about the history of whatever.
Yeah.
And a touch sports related, but not really.
Okay.
It's a ruse.
Oh.
And you'll find out why. So what do you know about the US Marshals?
Wow, that's not where I thought this was
Nope.
going.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the US Marshals, they do like witness protection.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all I know about them.
Fugitive with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Right.
What do you call it? Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, they sit on planes and they like escort people places. Like that's all I really got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're like super cops, but different from the FBI.
Right. They feel more like Mounties. Like I don't know why, but like in my head I'm like, you're like a ranger. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, oh, you're just the subject of a TV show that like Dick Wolf wrote.
Truly. So we're gonna talk about a little bit of a operation that like the U.S. Marshals were involved in.
Okay.
So October 1979. It's where it all begins. Ooh.
Settle again.
So the Attorney General at the time,
Yeah.
at that point, transfers responsibility of investigating and monitoring certain fugitives from the FBI to the US Marshals Service.
Okay.
So before the FBI was like, we're in charge of everything. And then now it's kind of like, let's break some things up, right? I think like the marshals like weren't doing a lot, and they're like, hey, you could help. You know what I mean? So at that point, 105 deputies were then trained as enforcement specialists to oversee investigations within their respective districts. So across all the states, you had 105 people now learning what it means to get a fugitive.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot more training involved than that.
Right.
Very intense. I think of what's it called? Silence of the Lambs. Like when she's in the, and she's running, she's doing all the training. Like that's what I imagine. They just like kind of ran a lot, you know, in full sweatsuits. So when all of that kind of started to happen and it all went down, they wanted to be really tactical about like what they were doing and like this kind of engagement. And so they created something called the Fugitive Investigative Strike Team, or FIST. And I said,
come on.
Perfect.
Why would you call it? Like, I know like fist is like, power, strength.
Just wait, because there's other parts of the story where it's just like they thought they were like the funniest people back in 1983. So they created FIST to support these select deputies. FIST was meant to look. You're just gonna laugh every time I say it, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Perfect. This is meant to look and activate in districts with heavy fugitive activity, major like metropolitan areas, things of that nature. And the strike team would travel from district to district to investigate and quickly apprehend the primary target of Class 1 offenders.
Okay.
Class 1 being like kind of the more obviously dangerous and like the higher felonies. So escaped federal prisoners, which it scares me to think that there's a lot of those. Because also, like, how did you get out? And why so frequent?
Right.
You know what I mean? So escape federal prisoners, bail jumpers, parole violators, probation violators, other things of that nature. And God damn it. Now that you're laughing every time I say FIST, when I read it on my page, I'm like, God damn it. FIST did some international collaboration as well, which is kind of cool. So you'll see, I'll talk about one where they like work with the Caribbean and also like the influence that kind of this team had in like the international policing world, I guess you could say.
Interesting.
So there were about nine FIST operations that kind of went down. You need to stop. God damn it. So
how can you not laugh at FIST operations?
All right. FIST 1
yeah.
is what it's referred to. Okay. Academically speaking.
Academics. That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. 76 fugitive felons were arrested in South Florida.
Oh.
And this happened in 1981. 55% of them were narcotics based. And altogether, these fugitives had 491 criminal incidents between them.
Oh, wow.
So pretty successful.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's big.
The second operation had 102 fugitives arrested in LA. Don't you dare say it. In 1982, with everything from criminal offenses from homicide, bank robbery, kidnapping, assault, smuggling, armed robbery. My favorite is alien smuggling, which clearly means like
immigration stuff.
Correct.
Right.
But like I like to think that they're like smuggling like small green men across borders. And then that was 865 felonies between them. The third operation, 303 fugitives in New York. The fourth, 614, 928 after that in Michigan, which was like, damn, Michigan, you got a lot.
Probably goes close to the Canadian border.
I would assume, maybe. 2,100 arrests in California for the sixth. 3,300 for the seventh, which was probably one of their most successful, or one of their most successful. And this is when they start to implement more so like scams, as they called them. So they would use like a Brooklyn Bridge delivery service, prior offenders employment opportunity, and like prize offers. So they would be like, hey, you have this valuable package, or you won money, or they had one where you won Boy George tickets. And I was just like, amazing. It's the 80s. With like dinner and a limo.
So the FIST operators would use those scams, or the criminals would use those scams?
The FIST operators would use them. So they would basically like send this out like in the mail and be like, you won, come claim your prize, or you have a special package, come down to whatever.
So kind of a bit of like a sting operation going on.
Exactly. And so they kind of did that a lot, and that's kind of where across multiple states they had these 3,300 fugitives arrested.
Okay, wow.
So that was 1984. The eighth one was 3,800, and the last one was about 3,500. So they really dropped off on that last one. It's like, oh,
that's all right.
Really didn't go out with a bang. You know what I mean?
Can't win the World Series every year.
So they say. So a few sting operations, speaking of which, one of my favorites is called, we'll be talking about one, but this one's called Mr. Zip, which is like, there's nowhere on the internet of why they called it Mr. Zip.
Okay.
Maybe zip code. But basically they realized that like mailmen kind of move in and out of neighborhoods just kind of like unnoticed.
Oh,
like when was the last time you were like, oh, that mailman's sketchy? You know what I mean? Like he's just like walking up the home.
I mean, like I know my mailman Mike. He's great.
Like, do you like talk to him?
When I see him, I say hi.
And like have a conversation, or do you just say like, hey, how's it going?
Usually just hey, how's it? Just like polite Midwestern conversation.
Which, okay, this is very tangent. Would you rather, when you pass someone, like in the hallway, like let's say you're living back in your apartment, you pass someone in the hallways, whatever.
Yeah.
Would you rather have like this kind of fake nicety of like, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Whatever, or just like nothing, and like maybe a smile?
The first building that I lived in, I wouldn't want to talk to anyone.
Heard.
But the other ones, I like said hi, got to know some neighbors.
Okay.
Like I never like had dinner with them, but it was like niceties.
Yeah.
In one of the buildings I lived in, there was a girl across the hall who had an adorable yellow lab puppy that Daisy, my dog, got to like be friends with. So like that was cute as hell.
That's adorable.
No, but like I'm Midwest.
Right.
Born and raised. And I know like in Chicago, like you get a lot of transplants and like people not from the Midwest, blah, blah, blah. Hear all the horror stories of Chicago. Don't trust anyone. No, but like Midwest blood. Gotta say hi. Hey, how's it going?
Right.
All that good stuff.
I was having this discussion with someone the other day, and they were saying, I'd rather it not be fake. Like, I'd rather have the genuine interaction of like the smile or nothing than like have the fake. And I said, that's BS. That's bullshit. Like, I'd rather pass you and be like, hey, how's it going? I don't expect you to respond with, oh, doing well. Like, how, like,
right. I don't need your life story.
Right.
If you want to tell me, sure, great. I'll have to sit down with you. But,
but like, I at least want the reciprocation, because like people on our floor aren't really like that. They'll just kind of be like, or like barely a smile. I'm like, we're not like why are we avoiding each other? It just feels very weird.
Right.
You know what
I'm
I mean?
your neighbor. Like,
right.
If there's a fire in this building, like we're all got to get out of here together.
And you know what? At this point, fuck all y'all. Okay? That's what I got to say. Yeah. But yeah, that was just like
I feel like the smile is the same genuine level as like, hey, how's it going? One's just vocal, one's not.
I'd rather the vocal though.
Well, yeah.
I think the smile is just really awkward.
Yeah, because like it could be like, I don't know, some people's like
One more time.
like an Ernie smile or something like that.
Truly. Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see. It's not going to change. It's fine. Because then I also think about like, well, do I want to know my neighbors? Not really. But at least I want the fake nicety. I want the Midwestern nicety.
Yeah. I don't think you get that much in the city. I think compared to other cities, you do, definitely. I mean, you talked about how in Seattle, no one's nice.
Truly.
But like, I think in the Midwest cities, like it's not as common as once you get out of the city proper.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's all I got. Anyway, so back to this postman.
Right.
So called Mr. Zip. So basically,
are we still doing fist operations? Are we?
This is all part
Mr.
of fist.
Zip? All right.
Nope. Nope. So this is all part of the strike team.
Okay.
Yes.
The fist strike team.
Okay. And so a deputy marshal would dress up as a mailman.
Okay.
And he'd show up with like a mail bag, a package, clipboard, bulletproof vest, gun. You know, typical things a mailman would have.
Always.
And basically he would go to a fugitive's last known address and be like, hey, you have this package. Like, I have a package for you. Like, I do need to see some ID to like make sure it's you. And then he would, on his clipboard, would have like a written description of the fugitive. So he could be like, okay, that matches. Yeah, that matches. And then would either give them the package or just kind of like adjust his hat, and that would be the signal to
do some type of
for the strike team to come in.
Click his heels 3 times.
Correct. Spin in a circle. That's it. He said, "I want to go home." And so that was kind of one of their actually successful sting operations. That's got to be so labor intensive. You know what I mean? Like every single house.
Do you think USPS was like, hey, can you deliver a couple things for us while you're doing this?
Like, can you make yourself a little more useful? Actually, I got a whole fucking truck back here. Come on. So that gives you a little bit of background of kind of what this team was doing, like between scams and stings and all of these things, like really trying to like make the most of, I mean, that was, I think like 1984. So it's only been 4 to 5 years since they've gotten this responsibility. Right. And they're like, let's fucking go. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now we get to what was called Operation Flagship. Okay. Which they utilized at the time. And let me tell you now, the team is now called the Washington Commanders. It's a football team. Right. It used to be the Washington Redskins.
We know that.
Okay. So at the time, it was called they were called the Washington Redskins. Not great. No, as we know. And as we talked about last week. Right. Right. For the sake of the episode, I will say Redskins because a lot of documents do talk about that. But just so everyone knows, they are now the Washington Commanders. Correct. And so the big thing with the Washington Redskins at the time in 1980s is that was like a hot ticket. Like getting tickets to a Washington Redskins game was insane. They had just won the 1982 Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. They made it into 1984 Super Bowl. Between 82 and 91, they had 7 postseasons, 4 conference titles, 3 Super Bowl wins. Like, it was nuts. Wow. The wait list for season tickets was like 25 years long. Holy. Like everybody wanted one. They at one point had like of home games. They had 149 straight sellout home games.
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Because in my lifetime, it's like as far back as I remember, like keeping track of football, like they were never like hot shit.
Right. I mean, this was the last time that they were truly like big. Yeah. So like looking at their history, a lot of their conference titles, a lot of their wins in like postseason games and such come from like the late 1930s and the 1940s, right? And then during the 80s. So they were huge. Yeah. And so everybody wanted tickets to a Redskins game, right? So Operation Flagship comes in December 15th, 1985. Okay. It was a Washington Redskins versus Cincinnati Bengals game. And this game was huge because it determined who went into the playoffs. Okay. So everyone's like, I got to be there. I got to see him win. Right. All these things, right? So back in November 1985, so just the month before, if you will, if you follow me along, Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal Tobias P. Roche, okay, and U.S. Marshal Herbert Rutherford III.
Oh, the third.
Give the approval and order to the strike team to have the D.C. Police Department mail invitations to the last known addresses of about 3,000 wanted persons.
Yes.
Have you seen this?
I think this story is starting to sound familiar now.
Okay. So they're like, hey, you know what? The game is gonna be huge. People really want to get into a game. Look at all the like sting operations we've done in the past of like telling people like you've won a lottery, you won tickets, things like that. Like, right. How do we keep that momentum going? Yeah. And they're like, okay, let's mail invitations to people saying that they won Washington Redskins tickets. So they mail it to about 3,000 persons.
Wow. Which, like just in Washington or just
in like the DC area.
Okay.
So not everyone, you'll see a very small percentage of people like respond. Yeah. I just can't imagine if like 3,000 people like actually responded. They're like, yeah, we'll be there. You know what I mean? Like I was like, that's a whole different operation. But invitations were sent from Flagship International Sports Television, which was a fake television company.
Oh, Flagship International Sports Television.
Also known as
FIST.
Hey! So, again, they think they're hysterical like with these names. And so the recipients were told that they won 2 complimentary tickets to the Redskins-Bengals game, along with a pregame brunch at the Washington Convention Center.
That's so nice.
Amazing.
Yeah. How could you refuse?
Well, I think the brunch like just really like clenched them. You know what I mean? And also, They said that you can enter a raffle to win 10 season tickets for the Redskins and the grand prize of a week-long all-expense trip to New Orleans to watch Super Bowl 20.
Wow.
So if I saw that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm in.
Right.
Now, if I was a fugitive, maybe a little more skeptical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you're a good fugitive.
Right. Maybe I've seen some of the other things that are happening in the media. You know?
Heard some stories.
Right. Not everyone thought like that, though. And so all of these fugitives were wanted felons for things such as assault, robbery, burglary, escape, narcotics, rape, arson, fraud, like some really heavy things, right?
Right.
And of the 3,000 mailers that were sent out, 167 responded positively. Which,
not a great ratio,
no,
but surprising.
It's surprising. And also, like, at least, like, you got people to come. You know what I mean? Like, that's still at least a big, you're not going door to door. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting people all in one place to kind of do these, like, group things, right? So, they also, I have a literal section in here, so they thought they were funny. So, all invitations were signed by I, Michael Detna. Or I am Detna. And Detna, backwards, is wanted. So it's I am wanted.
Oh, that's funny. They had a really good time.
A great time. And we'll get more into like the day of the event, but I was like, what theater kid was in charge of this goddamn operation? Operators would transfer fugitives, like when they called in to like claim their prize, to Flagship's business manager, Marcus Cran. Cran backwards is narc.
Wow.
To confirm their attendance while I Fought the Law would play in the background. And I was like, you're just giving it away. Like, I know that you're having fun, but like, you're just giving it away at this point. So all of this was happening like leading up to this event, right? They like, we need to start building things, all the mailers, people calling in, stuff like that. And they talk about, like in this kind of short documentary, they talk about how like the operator really had to sell it. You know what I mean? Because people would call and be like, this is a scam, or like, this is clearly the police and things like that. Right. And the operators basically had to be like, no, it's not. Like, you know, that's fine. If you don't want it, like, we're just going to give your tickets away to someone else. Like, that's fine. And so most of the time, at least for these people, like that really worked. Yeah. They were like, no, you're not giving my tickets away. Like, I want them. So then like kind of like coaxed them into being like, all right, I'm going to be there, whatever. Right. So the operator was kind of the person to really wrangle people in, you know? So so this was so convincing, like this lead up to it, that a lawyer from the actual local broadcaster for the Redskin games issued a cease and desist order stating that Flagship International did not have the appropriate license to operate in the district.
Oh, you dummy.
Dumb. Which I'm like, that's actually great though.
Right.
Because how validating to be like, this is so legit that this other broadcaster is like nervous about us stepping into this territory.
Right.
I'm like, that's hysterical. So the marshals and officers trained for 6 weeks, including 3 dress rehearsals. When I tell you the events of what happened here, I don't understand why you need 6 weeks. I just don't.
Right, because like in my head, they're just like the whole fist team is just like waiting behind this conference room door, and like you have 2 people outside waiting for these people with their flyers to come in. And they're like, oh, you're the lucky winner, right this way. And like they enter a dark conference room, and then the lights flick on, and like the whole fist operation just like jumps on the guy and like tie him up and like wait for the next one.
You're not completely wrong.
but like, why do you need 6 weeks for that?
Correct. There is more involved.
Okay.
But again, like, what are you doing for 6 weeks? Like getting
coming
in
up
character?
With all these, yeah, right. Coming up with all these fun names.
As a maintenance man, my backstory is like, what's happening here?
What's my motivation?
Right, exactly. And so, 3 dress rehearsals. They brought in deputy marshals actually from outside of the DC area because they were nervous that some of the fugitives would recognize the DC marshals. So I was like, yeah, that would have been bad real quick. Yeah. So now we're at the day of the event.
Okay.
Setup begins at 5:30 in the morning. bananas. Like, why not just set up the day before? Whatever. Anyway, I'm not part of this operation. 2 separate areas are being set up at this point. Okay. So you have the main area where people are coming in, like guests are being greeted, right? Hey, like I won, like, we have the tickets, blah, 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 like brunch is being made, whatever. Then you have an area to separate the fugitives into smaller batches. Because if you think about it, you don't want like 160 fugitives in one area that you then have to like pile on.
Right. And
you know what I mean?
And,
right.
Yeah.
So you have these 2 areas that they're kind of doing. So during one of the dress rehearsals, one of the like lead operators has a quote saying, "Remember one thing, we're cops and we have to smile today. We don't normally smile at bandits. Today we have to smile. We have to kill them with smiles." I was like, how, like, what a
we
pep
don't
rally.
Smile at bandits.
Yeah. Also the use of bandits. What is this, the Wild West?
I love the 80s.
What are you talking about? And so I thought that was hysterical. And so guests arrive at about 8 a.m., even though invitation says 9 a.m. Like, these people are pumped.
Right.
They're like, I want to be the first one, all of these things, right?
Get it while the eggs are hot and ready.
Right. I need that fresh pan of eggs. Right. The scene was incredibly fast. Like, they really, like, went into it, right? So you had officers carrying balloons, chanting and singing like Redskin songs, serving brunch, acting as maintenance staff, ushers, like they had the 1982 Super Bowl like playing on screens.
Wow.
People are cheering, there are cheerleaders, like this whole thing. Like they were like, we're gonna go all out.
They went out, yeah.
Again, what theater major sent this operation? One of the officers used a San Diego chicken suit to walk around and monitor if fugitives were getting suspicious. Now, again, you might be saying to yourself, what does the San Diego chicken have to do with the Washington Redskins?
That was my first question.
Nobody knows. So basically what happened was, it's December 15th, so it's around Christmas time. So they wanted to use Santa. And then they were like, if they were so nervous about public outcry of using Santa in a sting operation, that they're like, we have to switch it out.
Right.
And I was like, that's the 80s for
That's
you.
fair.
Is
I
it?
mean, well, I mean, like you could have like a kid like peek in and see Santa and be like, "Oh my God, Santa Claus," and then want to go see Santa, or like a fugitive runs out of whatever room they're in, and you just see Santa like booking it, tackling him, and like tasing the guy, and like the kid's traumatized.
I like to also think that because they were very dangerous fugitives, no children were in the vicinity of this convention center.
Fair.
Just throwing it out there. So the San Diego chicken, which at the time was actually very popular, just like commercially. So everyone kind of knew what this icon was, but just very odd. And so people started arriving. So now we're at arrival. Right. Setup has happened. All of our dress rehearsals are complete.
Perfect.
Places,
everyone.
Places, everyone. Thank you.
Places.
Correct. Thank you. When fugitives arrive on the scene, Flagship International employees would check their IDs and verify their identity. So they would walk up to the table, be like, okay, great. Like, you got your mailer. Like, let me see your ID. Someone would be on the phone, and they'd call to a back room. And watching this is hysterical. So they call to a back room, and like, of course, they don't have like computers. Right. So it's just like tubs of files. And they have to be like, they're like, what's that last name? And like spelling it and like pulling it out. And so they had different codes for like different people. So like a preferred winner was just, okay, this is a wanted fugitive. Like we know that because you got 2 tickets. So sometimes people would come with like a family member or something like that, and it's just not, they're not who you want per se, right? There was also, if they were a double winner, they were obviously a wanted fugitive, but they were considered dangerous.
Ooh.
Okay. So one guy even was like, walks up to this guy who's like at the breakfast buffet, and he's like, today's your lucky day, and you don't even know it, do ya? Like one of the cops. The guy's like, yeah, it is my lucky day. Like, I'm just like, don't be mean. And so they also talk about female officers acting as cheerleaders would discreetly, like as guests were walking in, like, and most of them were men. And so as they were walking in, they would like hug them and like put their arm around their waist.
Pat them down.
Yep.
Ooh.
The whole
sneaky.
Because they were like, a football game, like people aren't going to probably bring guns, but just in case.
Right.
So like, they're like, you need to make sure you've touched
anything. Every
like kind of point of this person, and a female with a male was a little obviously more appropriate to do that.
Right.
So they so that was kind of like their job to be able to do this. So Stacia Hylton had an interaction where she's escorting this like huge guy. Like she's tiny and he's just this like massive like biker fugitive. And he's like trying to kiss her.
Ew.
I know. It's like a little like you see him like lean in and she just says like ah ha 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 and like puts her arm like around him. And he's like, baby, today's my lucky day. And she goes, baby, who doesn't know that? It's going to be your lucky day.
Ew.
And I'm like, oh. But also like the undertone of that. Yeah,
gross.
Yeah. So this is kind of the vibe, right? It's also 1985. So this is what we're working with. So they separate people. They move them about. Louis McKinney is the chief of enforcement operations. He's wearing a full tux, top hat. He's like acting as the master of ceremonies. And they start
Love
like
that.
again. So you have like the greeting area, you have the brunch area, all those things. And then to be able to split them off into smaller groups, they now have like this conference room, like you're saying, right?
Okay.
So they all get into the conference room and there's about 10 to 20 per batch. And then Louis McKinney is up there and he's like, oh, like, you know, we're going to say like a few words and then we're going to announce like the grand prize, like raffle winners and stuff like that. And then on his mark, which is the code word surprise, once he says surprise, special operations group members would storm the auditorium, like wearing full tactical gear, surround and like arrest everyone.
Jesus.
Which watching it happen is hysterical because obviously they're not expecting it. So no one's trying to run. Because he'd just be like, surprise, you're all under arrest. And then they would just like flock in.
Right.
And then everyone was like, oh my God. Like no one had time to react
Can I
at
finish
all.
my cinnamon roll?
Right. Like, mid-bite. So like, honestly, very effective.
Yeah.
Because no one's trying to flee. They don't have time to. They're fully surrounded at that point. Right. And they were taken like into the hallway outside the conference center, tied up, and then put into buses.
Oh, okay.
Because initially the buses are outside and people are like, oh, those are the buses that are going to take us to the game from the convention center. And it's not the game.
JKLOL.
It's jail.
Prison.
And so one of the guys talks about as the buses were pulling away, they heard one of the fugitives yell, do we still get to go to the game?
Oh.
Which is like on one hand sad, but on the other hand it's like, bro, clearly not. like you're arrested. That's not going to happen. And so altogether, 101 fugitives are arrested that day, including 2 of the top 10 fugitives in D.C.
That's surprising. So did like 66 people not show up that day?
I think a few of them like just didn't show up. Yeah. And then of course, I think there were more people there, but not everyone was a fugitive.
Right. They brought
it was like a friend, a family member, things like that. But on this short documentary, just like watching it all unfold is, I mean, there's just so much genuine joy and excitement. And then they're like, freeze, everybody down.
Right.
And then it's just like, and it's like, and it's also the 80s. So they like toss people around a little bit more than they probably do today. I mean, at least we hope that they do today. Mm-hmm. And they're like just throwing people on the ground and like throwing them into the hallway. And like, it's not too barbaric, but it's almost like, all right. They're not going anywhere. You have like a rifle on you. I think we're all okay.
They're just a little excited.
Right.
Let's chill
this
out.
guy like did a robbery. All right. Like he's not armed.
Right.
So that's kind of like the whole operation. So very successful overall. So if we think about the aftermath of it, what's great is the reason we have this footage is because they brought in reporters from CBS and the LA Times to like publicize the event.
Okay.
Because they wanted to, it's part of that being real. Like, oh, like we want to like film so that like we can show how great, like in winners and stuff like that. And the director of US Marshals Services at the time, Stanley Morris, credits media coverage to boosting the Marshals profile with the general public. Because, I mean, obviously before that, we were also kind of like, who are the US Marshals? Right. And so now, I mean, to be honest, like I have nothing that I can think of as the US Marshal that is like a negative kind of background. You know what I mean? I think it's just like one, like profile in general, but also just like general like image. You know what I mean? Like a really positive general image.
Like positives and negatives for the FBI and definitely the CIA and like all this other stuff. But like the Marshals, they're just like, you know, chill. And, like you related them to the Mounties. Like nothing's wrong with the Mounties as far as I know.
Well, and like just general like city police. You know what I mean? Because you're coming out of the 70s, so like that's rough. Like tensions between people and the police, even in the 70s, is rough. So you're coming out of that.
That was really bad back then. Yeah.
And so now you're thinking of like US Marshals. So people are like, oh, those seem like good guys.
Right.
And we now know who they are. So this was also like kind of part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Total cost of this operation is about $22,000, which kind of seems like a lot, but it's about $220 per arrest, which on average, marshals spend about $1,300 per arrest in 1985.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't seem like it seems like a lot, but I was surprised that it was that low.
Extremely cost effective.
Yeah.
They actually said the most expensive part was the eggs. Just kidding. But just extremely, extremely cost effective.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about how, sometimes we spend millions of dollars on just like labor and all of these operations just to get like these top guys that are on the most wanted list.
Definitely.
And here they got 2 of them by spending, $200 to get them.
Right.
So like done very well. Louis McKinney, who was like the master of ceremonies.
Top hat guy.
Correct. And Stacia Halton, who was one of the cheerleaders, actually later became directors of the US Marshal Service.
Oh, no shit.
And a few of the actual operators in the game end up like really climbing the ranks and becoming top members of the US Marshal Service, which is actually really cool.
That is cool.
They also had another sting after this, called the Puño Airlines sting, where basically they use the same kind of concept where like, you won something.
You won a trip somewhere.
So that you won a free trip to the Bahamas.
Okay.
So 14 arrests were made, and they had the idea of instead of like getting them into the airport where there was like a lot of public, obviously, they were like, oh, we're going to send a limo to pick you up.
Oh.
To bring you to the airport.
That's nice.
So 13 out of the 14 arrests were made in the limo, which, beautiful, right? And then one of them, though, denied the limo. And he like showed up to the airport, super skeptical of like this whole like Puño airline booth.
Definitely.
It was like positioned next to, I think, Air Haiti, all these things. He's like, this is kind of weird. And so they quickly like, not changed tactics, but they were quickly like, okay, we need to be a real airline. And they called for like a random person over the loudspeaker. And that's when he was like, oh, that seems more believable, right? Which, sure.
Why not?
So then he walks up and is then immediately arrested.
Perfect.
Right. So they got their 14 people. But again, like all of these sting operations, like either whether it be like the mailman or people showing up to like the to pick up their package, or even this one, that's like one at a time, or like 14 arrests. You know what I mean?
Right.
In Operation Flagship, like this is 101 arrests in a span of a few hours.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like incredible in that capacity. And I was like, that's awesome. Also, puño means fist in Spanish.
Oh, goddamn.
Every time they get you. And so it was really great. Like from all the publicity and stuff like that, international police agencies were actually calling the Marshal Service at this point, being like, can you tell us what you did? How was it successful? Teach us your ways. Yeah. Come like basically like, consult on like operations that we want to do. So it had its lasting impact. And eventually NFL Films did like a short documentary on it, which is like kind of what I watched. It was like about 12 minutes, like super quick. And ESPN did like a 30 for 30.
Oh,
which fun. So that's Operation Flagship.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's just like a fun little story of just like how they just did sting operations for fugitives.
They had so much fun. I bet they were just laughing their asses off,
right.
like
the
just
whole
around
time.
The water like tank, being like, "Oh my god, did you hear what we're doing?"
Well, the whole like, it's your lucky day and you don't even know it. I'm like,
come on,
all right, come on, guys, a little compassion. You know what I mean? So yeah, it'd be interesting to learn more about like modern stings, because I think like we don't have kind of that same ignorance as back then. I think there was a little bit more trusting, so to speak. You could get away with just like package delivery, right. You won, things like that. But now everything's a scam. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so nowadays I'm like, how do you do, like, what's your tactic? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I only think of like going undercover kind of stuff. I think 21 Jump Street.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
We were talking last night, we were out at dinner, and we were talking about, like, unfortunately, the accusation that there's a serial killer like on the north side of Chicago.
Right.
Because all of these men are kind of, wandering away from bars, potentially intoxicated and then end up being found in the river. Nobody knows how. And it's like all these young white men, all these things. And
right.
of course, because they're white, there's like this huge outcry. And so there's like this concept of that. And I'm just like, where's the sting operation? Who's the bait? Like immediately, I mean, rewatching Brooklyn Nine-Nine currently, like that might filter into my thought process a little bit. But also like how often do these happen? Or is it more in the movies? You know what I mean? I want more of that intensity.
It's gotta be more of like a Hollywood thing.
Totally. But also like, even like we talked about in the beer episode, the 10-cent beer night, I'm like, bring it back. Like back, you know what I mean? Where they had like the 70s, the 80s, where it was just like all of these things where you could do like
this chaos.
This like, and very theatrical.
Yeah.
Like everything was so like, thinking about it, so theatrical and like over the top, but hysterical and amazing all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just another like fun little story of this tiny little piece of history that you might not know about.
No, I didn't know all these details, especially that it's called Fist.
God damn it. I thought you were over this.
No.
That's why I kept on saying strike team.
I noticed.
So had you recognized it like when I was talking about it at all?
I think I heard about the operation for the football game, but not all the details. Like I think it was just kind of like a fun fact trivia thing. That was just like, oh, the back of my brain was like, hey, this sounds familiar. But no, I didn't know all of that. Like that's fucking hilarious. It's
awesome. And like honestly, like watch the clip like later, or like you folks like go watch it, because you see like everything I'm describing. They have clips from the actual day because CBS is there recording it. Like actual clips of people like either the batch getting surrounded or like them coming in and like the cheerleaders, and it's a full out like people are pumped. Yeah. There's an energy.
I think if I were the cameraman, just like a normal cameraman for CBS, I'd be shitting myself.
Because the question is, do you tell them?
Right. Do they know? Like, or is it just the marshals that know?
Right. I don't know. Because, like, on one hand, you feel like you should, like, for their safety be like, but on the other hand, like, what if all of a sudden there's, like, this, like we should tell them? Maybe
Or
not?
do you just, like, assign a marshal, be like, hey, watch over the camera guy?
Right. Well, because it feels like entrapment, but it's not entrapment.
Yeah.
Because, like, they didn't, they're not being tricked into committing a crime. They're just being tricked to get caught.
Show up.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting to know more about like whether they knew or not.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. But yeah, that's all I have for you today, Dev.
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah, of course. I hope you enjoyed.
Fun little story.
Totally. All right. Well, catch us on all of the things, all the social medias.
You can read the card today.
Thanks. So on TikTok, Instagram, and the tube of views, we are What Do You Know _podcast. And on Twitter, it is WDYK _podcast. Stream us wherever you listen to podcasts. And in case you didn't know, this is a podcast.
There you go.
Thank you. What do you call it? And like, subscribe, comment, all the things. We're
5
trying
stars.
trying to play with the algorithm here. We know how that is. So do all of it. All right. Well, thanks, Dev.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye-bye.